Glad to see everybody. We've got people coming in now. Going to get started a couple minutes after 12 just as people come in. So thanks for being here. We'll host this just as we have, as you've probably seen other town halls being hosted over the course of the summer. So I've got some comments and some information to pass on, and then we're going to open it up to questions. If you have questions, you can type them in the Q&A. You can also upvote if there's somebody that has asked a question that you also have. And then after my brief slides, we'll go into questions after that. So feel free to type into the Q&A if you have any questions. I hope everybody's having a great day. I'm here on the second floor of the Project Center overlooking everything. Looks like a nice day out there, and I'm glad to see everybody out on campus. Okay, it is 12:02. In the interest of time and getting some information out to you and also to your colleagues who may be joining us, I'm going to dive in. So just a reminder, this is a webinar format presentation. So if you do have questions, you can type them into the Q&A. We will have time to answer questions live. And if there are questions that you have that you see someone else has put in the Q&A, you can also upvote them so that we know which questions are most important to get answered. A recording of this is also going to be posted on YouTube. So welcome to our first event of our 2020 Global Fair. My name is Erin Bell, and I'm the Interim Director in the Global Experience Office. The goal of this presentation is really to get you started with the application process and point you in the right direction. We have lots of content that you may have already been reading over the summer. So my goal is not to reiterate that content, but really just to kick things off and point you to those resources. So if you went last year to the Global Fair, if you are a rising sophomore, you may have been to the event that looks like this. So we talked about it as a team and said, wow, this is pretty anxiety inducing in our current environment. And obviously an event with 1,000 people is just not possible right now. So the Global Fair has always been meant to be a kickoff to our application process to show you the breadth and the depth of the program and how many opportunities are available to you. And when we knew that was not going to be possible in person this year, we surveyed rising sophomores, faculty directors, and also return students who have already completed off-campus IQPs to see how we could create this in a virtual environment that would make sense and still meet the goals of the Global Fair. The resounding Global Fair goals that came out were that people wanted to learn more about Project Center opportunities available, find out next steps to apply, and talk with return students. So we hope that's what we are providing over the next 2 weeks. The Global Fair is going to run from today until next Thursday, the 17th, with a series of regional panel sessions. Those will be from IQP directors who will be talking more about their project centers, special topic highlights like humanities opportunities, MQPs, other globally focused opportunities on campus, and then return student sessions, which we know has been a highlight of previous years, and the opportunity to put you in touch with return students. There's two links that I think are important to bookmark now, and I'll put them up here and remind you of them along the way. The first is the Global Fair link. That's just plus Global Fair 2020. And the second is off-campus IQP, plus off-campus IQP. That's going to get you directly to the IQP resources page where we have been cataloging all of the information about how to apply, and it's pretty much the place to start if you have questions. Finally, up this morning is our passport to the Global Fair. It is a reiteration of a lot of the information that you can find online, but if you like to have something in print, especially if you would like to have a full list of all of the project centers available in 2021, 2022, print out the passport, and I think it would make a great checklist for you as you start to shop around for your IQP opportunities. So getting the word out in a virtual environment is obviously different. We don't have a line out the quad for people to get into the rec center. So we sent postcards home this summer. We've done weekly newsletters that you've hopefully seen and read. We have worked very closely with the faculty directors to make sure eProjects is fully up to date with information about projects. And finally, we've made a video series that hopefully some of you have watched already. And if you haven't, I will walk you through what those videos look like today. So if you're here, we obviously got your attention. If you're watching this as a recording, we got your attention, and we're just glad you're here. And we're especially glad that you're taking this time out in this environment to learn more. We've broken down the steps to apply for the off-campus IQP into 3 steps: explore, prepare, and apply. First, when you're exploring, that's right now. That's watching this video and attending this webinar. That's deciding between the off-campus model, which is the 1-term IQP, or on campus, which is typically completed over 3 terms. I'm sure that for some of you, your academic plans have changed. Maybe your 3 or 4 year plan has changed depending on how you're completing coursework here at WPI. So we want you to think about what works best for you. And eProjects is going to be your primary source for learning more about the project centers available. So you can see the terms offered, the projects that typically happen at a project center, and the budget information there. It's all mobile friendly, so you can just page through and watch videos, even on your phone or your tablet. And eProjects is going to be the place to go. Also attending the Global Fair events this week, we intend for the regional sessions to be a highlight to what you see on eProjects. So we want you in eProjects doing your research, comparing and contrasting, sites that are interesting to you, and then coming to the regional sessions with that knowledge and hoping to gain a little bit more information from the directors themselves. So if you're just getting started out, we encourage you to watch the IQP Explained video, which can be found at that Plus Off-Campus IQP page. Here's what that page looks like, Plus Off-Campus IQP. And like I said, this is where to start. You can read through all of this information and pretty much be an informed applicant. Also on eProjects, this is just what it looks like when you click on project opportunities. You can then filter by project type, IQP in this case, on campus or off campus. You can even filter down to term if you prefer. And once you click on any of those purple squares, you'll see details about the project center there. We've got housing information, transportation, other factors to consider like health and safety and medical information, and of course, videos to watch about each project center. Then you'll start to prepare. So some of you may have done this already. I think last I counted, we had over 100 applications that were already started in eProjects. Don't worry if you haven't done that already, you have time. We opened the application early intentionally this year for you to have time to get into it, understand what you needed to do, and shop around for your project center experiences. So the application includes a resume, essay, 2 references, and a couple other background details. You can find a full preview on the Getting Started video, which is also at that off-campus resources page. And then you'll want to start narrowing down your preferences. So we are recruiting right now for E21, which is next summer, all the way through to E22, which is the summer following next academic year. So we know that that's a huge range, and that gives you 57 site and term offerings to think about. So it's important for you to think about what your top choices would be within that. Remembering that you are applying to the off-campus program that has multiple opportunities available to you. As part of your application, we're going to ask you for your top choices within that program. You are not applying to just one site by site. So when you're ready to start the application, you can click either on Apply Now in any of the Project Center pages, or by going to the Forms library, which is at the top bar, and opening up the 21-22 application there. Your application form, as well as your preference form, are both due by October 5th at 9 a.m. Remember with your preference form that we will only consider you for placement at the places that you indicate to us as your top choices. So there's 3 buckets. There's more information about this on the How to Apply video, but those buckets are very interested, and not interested. We will not place you in a place that you said you are not interested in going. We will, however, ask for some flexibility from you, at least 6 options in your top categories, so that we have enough flexibility in order to place as many people in their top choices as possible. This process has been very successful. We've been able to place most students in their top choice, their very interested choice, and only a few in their interested choices. So with your flexibility and your careful thought ahead of time, we can make sure that we place people in the places that they want to go. There's so much more detail to that, and I'm happy to dive into some questions if you have them, but the best place to watch is the How to Apply video, where we go into more detail about the preference process. So if you have any questions at all, you can reach out to our office. The Global Experience Office facilitates the Global Projects Program, so all of the off-campus project opportunities, as well as any other travel off-campus. So when club or athletic international travel resumes again, we are involved in those travel as well. And new this year, if you are a sophomore that is eligible for the program, you should have received a welcome message from your application liaison already. This is just our attempt to reach you again in a different way and to make sure that our door, quote unquote, is open if you have questions or you need some more information about the application process. So we are happy to set up Zoom meetings with you. We're happy to email back and forth, whatever works for you, but please reach out to your application liaison if you have questions. And if you didn't get that email, or if you just can't find who that person is, you can always email global@WPI and we can find you there as well, or we can help you there as well. So I want to dive into questions. I want to answer 2 that I'm sure are on your minds first, though. The first being, we've had some questions about on-campus IQP and the difference between the off-campus and the on-campus model. Off-campus IQPs are structured as the 1-term model, where you take ID 2050 in the term before, and then you're fully focused on your project for 1 term. The on-campus IQPs are typically spread out over 3 terms, and there's nothing you need to, if you're interested in the on-campus IQP, there's nothing you need to do right now. The application right now is open for off-campus programs. In the spring, there'll be an on-campus opportunities fair, and that is typically when you would find and source your on-campus IQP. So right now we're thinking about off-campus. There's plenty of time to arrange on-campus if that's what interests you. The second question that I'm sure is on your minds, or maybe on your family's minds as well, is about resumption of travel. So if you have upperclassmen friends who are doing their IQP right now this fall, you probably know that they're working remotely. Most of them are still maintaining contact with their sponsors wherever they may be off campus, but at the moment are not able to travel to those locations. A lot of this is driven by university-wide decisions. So not just about the Global Projects Program itself, but about how are we keeping our whole bubble safe. So we're disappointed with you that we're not able to do that, but we need to be able to do it when it's safe to do it, to travel again. So that's why people are working remotely for now. We're recruiting for E21 through E22 with the hope and plan that travel will resume when it's safe to do so, and as quickly as it's safe to do so. So our advice to you is that you should be applying for the term that makes sense for you and the project centers that are most interesting to you, regardless of what the travel situation looks like in our world. So if E21 has made sense to you from day one, and you've always said that it would be the best fit to do a project, in E21, I would encourage you to still indicate that on your preference form, and just know that we'll be in touch about anything that could impact travel in the future, and about how that might look differently for terms that could be impacted. The most important thing is that you're staying on track for graduation and that you're completing your project, as I mentioned, in the schedule and in the plan that you originally had. So that may have changed for some of you, but we want to make sure that you're getting to graduation and that you're finishing your projects when you need to. So we will make sure that you have an IQP no matter what the conditions of travel look like at that time. And as you can see, unfortunately, for most of 2020, our students who were signed up for off-campus IQPs are completing those remotely. So with that, I'm happy to open it up to questions, and our program coordinator, Deb Fusaro, in our office is gonna lead us off with those.
Thanks, Erin. The number one question today was the likelihood of travel abroad in 21-22. So thank you for answering that question. Another question is, when you apply for your IQP, can you select the term you want to go?
Yes. So that's all about what the preference form is. So if you have other commitments on campus or you're in athletics, whatever it might be, you can give us the terms that work for you in that preference form. So if only B term works for you, then you should only rate B term programs on your preference form. That means a little bit of flexibility in location for you. So, considering all of your options within a term, I think most terms we have at least 10 options, if not more. So you'll just want to consider, you kind of have to weigh all of your options at that point. If B term's the only thing that works, then you might have to kind of expand your reach in terms of location that you're interested in. Thanks, Deb.
Erin, also, where do you find the preference form?
The preference form, good question, I should have put that on here, is opening on Friday. So don't worry about it just yet. It will be open on Friday, and we'll make sure you know where it is. It's going to be in the forms library on eProjects.
Okay. Is there any advantage to submitting your application earlier?
No. So we will not start review of applications until the application deadline is complete on October 5th at 9 a.m. After that time, we have a little bit of cleanup to do in the application process. We upload everyone's transcript, including your A-term grades. And we also do judicial checks to make sure there's no judicial history that we need to address as part of the application process. If you did have a judicial history, after October 5th, you'll get a message from us asking you to complete one more question, which is just related to what happened in that judicial incident and how can we how might it impact your ability to go away or, your time off campus, and how can we be comfortable that, the same incident wouldn't happen off campus? If there are incidents that we are concerned about, we would also pull you in for a meeting, just to talk a little bit more about the impact of an incident, a similar incident happening off campus. 99% of the time, this is just a conversation. So if you did have something come up last year, don't be nervous that you're not going to be eligible to apply. Most of the time, we just want to have a conversation about what happened and, the impact of similar situations when you're far afield.
So Erin, will GPA have a large effect on placement for IQP?
Good question. So GPA is just one factor. There is no GPA requirement for the off-campus IQP application, and your whole application is going to be part of the review process. So your answers to your essays, your resume that you upload, including hopefully some work experience or teamwork experience that you've had before, your GPA and classes, your progress in classes thus far. But those are all a combined part of your application. So if your first year at WPI didn't go as strongly as you would have liked it to be, first of all, take some care in writing in the academic history section of the application. There you can include, what happened. Maybe you had a term that just did not go well, and you can talk about what happened in that term. Or maybe you changed majors. You came in as biotech and you decided that's just not going to be what works for you. So use the academic history section to talk about anything within your transcript that you think might be of concern.
So eProjects has a budget sheet for each location that lists billable and non-billable costs. Can you speak to what that means and whether the global scholarship can apply to non-billable costs?
Yes, thank you. So on eProjects, on the bottom of every page, you'll see billable and non-billable costs. Billable is what's going to show up on your WPI bill for the semester that you're going away. So if you were going away to Cape Town in B term, on your fall semester bill, you would have the billable cost for Cape Town. That includes housing costs, sometimes other programmatic costs, like if there's a group excursion that we book or language classes, that's what's part of that housing and program fee in the billable costs. The non-billable is anything that is just for budgetary reasons, we want you to know about other associated costs. So round trip transportation, meals, if you need to provide your own meals, tourist activities and incidentals. So things, that you might do in your time there. Those are non-billable. They're not going to show up on your bill, but they are important for budget reasons for you to just be thinking about the total cost of your experience. Financial aid also uses that total cost to look at your institutional aid. And if the cost is above a certain amount, there may be a small adjustment to your institutional aid, not your global scholarship, but just your overall aid for the semester that you go away. Your global scholarship is applied as a credit for the semester that you go away. So it is yours to use towards that billable cost, which is going to show up on your bill, or anything else. So you'll indicate once you get your placement next spring, you'll indicate to the financial aid office where you're going and for what term. And then they'll make sure that your global scholarship is applied as a credit for that semester. What you do with it from there is up to you. And it's very individualized from that point, because since it's a credit on your bill, you could either pay off your normal bill and request a refund for the difference. You could leave the credit on there and just have it go towards tuition. that's why I say it's really kind of individualized from there, but it will offset the cost of your program fee because like, this is just off the top of my head, but let's say Cape Town is, has a $2,800 program fee. Then you're going to have a credit that will offset the cost of that program fee. So that's how the scholarship works. And there's more information linking from our website. There's more information on the financial aid website about scholarships as well.
Thanks, Erin. A little question about the application itself. Does the application save, or would I have to submit everything at once?
It saves. So you can walk through it and see what's there and then go back. It will not submit until you get to the last page and say, are you ready to submit? Yes. And then you send it in. If you submit it by accident and you need to change something and it's before the deadline, email Global and we can help you unsubmit that.
Thanks. Is there a resource on how IQP application resumes differ from a regular internship resume?
Oh, that's a good question. The CDC has worked with us closely forever on the IQP application process. And I think they would be a good resource if you're trying to tailor your resume for the IQP application. We don't have any examples out on our website, but the most important thing to highlight, which we do say in our materials, is any work experience and any teamwork experience. So if you haven't been to the CDC yet, they do resume critiques and resume building workshops. So this would be a great time to use that resource and get your resume up to date before the application process. One tip I will give you is that format means just as much as content. So don't leave your resume to the last minute. You want to make sure that your resume looks polished and professional, and the content is, is clear as well. But the format of it and the readability of it are just as important, and the CDC can help you with that.
Is it possible to select E21 term and only rate E21 project centers?
It is. We actually have, I believe we now have 6 opportunities in E21, understanding that maybe some of those opportunities are not of interest to everyone. You could also think about E22, but if you really are having questions about how many places to rate, I would encourage you to reach out to your application liaison or email Global, and we can talk more about how to rate, especially for E21, where your choices may be a little bit more limited.
If a project center suggests you be proficient in a language, is that a hard requirement, or could someone with passable, though not proficient, still apply?
You could still apply. So when you are completing the language information, you may want to take an opportunity to explain what you're doing already to increase your language ability, and how you would plan to get up to speed. One project center that I will highlight is Paraguay. The requirement for Paraguay is high for a reason, because you complete your project work in Spanish, you do your final presentation in Spanish, and even some of your final write-ups for the end. So that's a pretty intensive language experience. I would encourage you to come to the regional session for our Latin America programs if you have, and let's talk about that question again with the directors, because I think they can be the best resource to say how much Spanish are they looking for at each center.
Who can be our references, and what do we require from them?
Great question. This is great. So your references we ask for 2 names, only names, not reference letters, just the names of 2 people and their contact information. The first should be a WPI faculty member. And I know most of you are rising sophomores, so you just had your first year. You had 1 term that was remote. So, you know, your connection to faculty may not feel that deep yet. But the reason we ask for a faculty member is because if our faculty directors who are reviewing applications want to reach out to somebody to get a little bit more information about academic history, they want to hear from another faculty member about that, not from a club, you know, club advisor or coach or something like that. So we need to have at least 1 faculty. And if you're strapped for figuring out who that might be, think about maybe somebody who, if you took GPS last year, your GPS faculty would be a great reference. If you had a course where you went to a lot of office hours or, you know, extra meetups where it was smaller groups, that might be a faculty member who you have a stronger connection with. I understand that, you know, a lot of you were probably in bigger classes last year, but just try to think of who might have the best understanding of how you've been doing academically. And keep in mind that could be an A-term faculty member. That could be somebody that you're working with right now, because you don't have to submit your final application for a few more weeks. So that could be somebody you're working with right now. The second person can be any and all of the above. So that could be a club advisor, a coach. That could even be somebody who you had a very close relationship with back in high school. If you think that person would be a good reference for you too. So keep in mind, we don't need the reference, we don't need a letter, we just need the names and contact information.
Thanks. Is there a specific reason for the geographic limitations per term? For example, most European IQPs are in D term, or is this just a project center limitation?
That's a good question. I think it's just a project center limitation. So project center, the success of the WPI Global Projects Program really lies with the faculty directors and their commitment to the program and their commitment to building strong relationships in the countries where their project centers happen. So sometimes it's environmental factors, you know, it's not a good idea to be in India in A term because that's the monsoon season and we don't want to, you know, be there when everything's getting flooded out. So sometimes there's factors about what time of year makes sense for the program. And sometimes it's just about what works for that faculty director and the contacts and relationships that they have there. We've tried to spread the project centers out as much as possible with the knowledge that a lot of people do look for C and D term programs. So you'll see that those are slightly larger, though not huge in comparison. They are slightly larger than A and B.
For transfer students applying to the off-campus IQP, does WPI consider previous institution records?
Yes, we do. So we'll ask you to indicate on your application that we have access to your previous record. The registrar has that as part of your admission to WPI, and then we will upload that and include it as part of the review of your application, especially because your transcript, if this is your first year at WPI, your transcript is just going to have your A-term grades. So we want to be able to see how things went previously as well.
Thanks. If you're planning to graduate in 2022, would you be able to do the IQP in E22 and then graduate afterward?
I saw this one pop up on the chat. I would actually refer you to the registrar for that question. I don't have much more information than that. It's a question of whether you could walk at graduation or if if there would be too much still open for you to finish. But I think it's best to contact the registrar, which is just registrar@WPI, and they can clarify it for you.
Okay. We have one more question here. I saw somewhere that IQPs were divided into divisions based on content or department. Is that something that is specific to project centers?
That's a good question. IQPs, the off-campus IQPs are very much interdisciplinary as part of their name and as part of the division that they sit under. The IQP is by design meant to be a project where you're working outside of your typical discipline. So the project centers themselves, some do have themes, some do have topics that are or problems that are often focused on at their centers. Other project center directors will tell you that they're all over the map. So it really, and no pun intended, I guess, but it really depends on the project center and the types of relationships that those directors have built in those centers. You should see a good indication of that on e-projects, but if you have more questions, then definitely come to the regional sessions this week and next week, because the directors can talk more about their goals there. But I think it really comes down to the relationships that the directors have built and the goals that they have for the center. So some centers are, focused on environmental problems, or, if you look at Venice, for example, it's very much focused on city planning and, municipal planning for the city of Venice related to flooding and other, environmental factors in that city. When you look at some of the other centers, you'll notice that there's really a large kind of diversity in the types of projects.
And we have one more pretty good question here. When do students learn exactly which projects are available at a site, and how are projects assigned within a site?
This is a great question.
Projects are available happen after you've been accepted to a site?
Yes. So this is a really great question. Thank you for it. Right now you're applying to the project centers that interest you based on the information that you have now about those project centers. But the directors, the faculty who direct those centers have not yet determined their specific projects for next year. So the way that the kind of timeline works is you apply now, you'll have your placement by December, and you'll make your final decision, committing to that program by January. And then in the weeks leading up to your prep term, the term before you go away, you'll hear from your project center director about exactly the projects that they're planning for. And they will ask you for your preferences for those projects. So you typically will travel with 24 students and 2 faculty members, four people for projects. So that's about 6 projects. The director would send you those 6 projects. You'd have an opportunity to read the descriptions and ask questions, and then they would do the final placement. So you won't know your exact project and your exact project sponsor until usually the weeks leading up to the prep term. So if you're doing a project in C22, you would start hearing about project opportunities in A term of next year.
Thanks. How many students are accepted to each project?
So there's typically 24 students, breaking down to 6 projects, and 2 faculty that advise those projects. So the standard size is 24.
Thanks. If you need to make a change to your IQP application after you've submitted the application, what would that process look like?
So as long as it's before the deadline, as long as it's before October 5th, if you just email global global@WPI, we can help reopen that application for you.
What happens if you just don't get accepted anywhere?
Good question. This is part of our plan is always looking ahead to the next academic year, trying to think about how many students are going to be interested in the program and how we meet that demand. So last year, for example, was the largest sophomore class we've ever had. We made sure that we had enough space in the program to meet that demand, and enough space in the centers that we knew would be of most interest. So it's kind of a twofold answer where we are asking for your flexibility and careful thought about the project centers available. And as you complete your preference form, we hope you give us as much flexibility as possible, as many options as possible on that form. And then we will do the matching process and make sure that as many people are placed in their top choices as possible. If you did not get placed, the reason that someone would not get placed is, number one, if they were just ineligible for the program right now. You can see some more about eligibility on our website, but either didn't have sophomore status at the moment, or there were concerns for the application right now, maybe academic concerns or judicial concerns. The second reason that we wouldn't be able to place somebody is if we just didn't have enough options on their preference form, and the places that they were interested in were of high interest to many students. So if you only put on your preference form sites that everybody else is also very interested in, it makes it difficult for us to place. We only have 24 spaces, so it makes it difficult for us to place everybody in their top choice. So you can see a list of the sites that last year were typically rated very highly. We don't mean that we don't want you to consider those sites. Most of them you probably will look at and say, oh, that's one of the places I was thinking about. But we do want you to think about the fact that if you only rate sites that have been highly interested or that have received a lot of interest in the past, it may be more difficult for us to place you. So if you don't get placed, I think the actual question was, what happens if I don't get placed? If you don't get placed, we are here to work with you, whether it is deciding that on campus might be a better fit for you, whether it's reapplying later on, because you've probably seen that we do open up space in our program throughout the year. So we fill most of our space during this fall application process. But if we end up with some spaces that are still available, or somebody had to withdraw for some reason, we do republish and repost available space. So somebody that didn't get placed in the fall could have the opportunity to reapply later on.
Where can we find the list of the most interested sites from last year?
So that's going to be on the How to Apply video, which is the third video of the series. And Deb is actually the person who narrates that one and walks through the preference form and the ratings to consider.
Okay, what is the latest that changes might be able to be accepted on IQP applications? In other words, if something comes up after October 5th and you need to change your IQP application, is that possible?
In extenuating circumstances, but overall, no. You should be planning to submit your full application, completed, done, proofread by October 5th. If within that time frame there was a real change in your preferences, I'd encourage you to come to our office and we could talk about it. But your essays should be done by October 5th. Your resume should be fully done. We have a lot of back-end stuff to do, like I said, with uploading transcripts and things like that. So overall, we want to have the most complete applications by then, but in an extenuating circumstance, we're always here. You can email Global if you had questions.
Can we see how many people request each site each year?
Not live. So we have the data from last year, and that's what's on the how to apply video. But we won't have, you know, live data of who's indicating their preferences this year. That is, you know, that's what we'll be able to see after everybody submits their preference forms.
Okay, I think that covers everything. I don't think we have any more questions out here.
Great.
Thanks, Erin.
Well, we really appreciate this. Thank you, Deb. And we will be posting this on YouTube. We'll have a recording of it available. And if you have any questions at all, just reach out. We're glad to have you. And good luck with your applications.